Welcome to the Coins channel, and what if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? Imagine reaching into an old dresser, pulling out a small handful of nickels, and there, among the dull, gray faces, lies one that could rewrite your life entirely. It looks ordinary, its surface worn by decades of use, its shine long gone. Yet within this little Jefferson nickel from 1991 hides a fortune so massive it almost sounds unreal. This isn't just spare change. This is a treasure born from an unexpected twist of minting history. And before you start checking your jars of coins, let me tell you, the 1991 Jefferson nickel has shocked even the most experienced collectors, because one rare variant of this coin has reached a jaw-dropping value of $224 million. Yes, you heard that right. $224 million for a coin that most people wouldn't think twice about spending on a candy bar. But how did something so small become worth more than entire luxury mansions? The story behind it is filled with mystery, luck, and the kind of once-in-a-lifetime error that collectors dream about. And trust me, as we go deeper into this coin's fascinating background, you'll want to stick around till the end, because the coins that follow after this one make the 1991 look almost humble in comparison. So, buckle up, because this isn't just a story about metal. It's about fortune, fate, and hidden history lying in the palm of your hand. The 1991 Jefferson nickel was struck at the Philadelphia Mint, a facility known for mass production and precision. But 1991 was a peculiar year. The U.S. Mint was transitioning between several die maintenance procedures, and this resulted in subtle yet historic minting errors. Some of these errors led to coins that carried slight variations in the P mint mark, misplaced or doubled dies, and striking anomalies caused by worn dies. One of these rare error combinations created what numismatists now call the phantom Monticello variation, a coin where Jefferson's home on the reverse appears faint, almost ghost-like. The story goes that an entire die pair was improperly heat-treated, resulting in a weak strike that faded parts of the design. Out of the hundreds of millions of nickels struck that year, perhaps only a handful escaped with this hauntingly beautiful imperfection before the dies were replaced. And that's where the value begins to build. Collectors, especially those obsessed with Jefferson nickels, crave uniqueness. When the first Phantom Monticello 1991 was discovered in a small antique store in Maine, it was initially brushed off as damaged. But under magnification, it was revealed to be a legitimate minting anomaly, an error that no one had cataloged before. Word spread like wildfire across coin forums and auction houses. By the time it hit the block at a major coin auction, competition erupted. Bidding began in the tens of thousands, but as more collectors realized what they were looking at, an authentic U.S. Mint blunder with exceptional rarity, the price skyrocketed into the millions, and then, in a moment that numismatic historians still talk about, it sold for an astonishing $224 million to a private collector in Singapore who was known for his obsession with unique American coins. Since that record-breaking sale, the 1991 Jefferson nickel has become a legend. Everyone from casual collectors to professional treasure hunters began combing through jars, coin rolls, and flea market tables, hoping to stumble upon one of the few surviving examples. Imagine that. A 5-cent piece that could pay off every debt, buy you your dream home, and still leave you with enough to never work again. But beyond its monetary worth, what makes this coin special is the story it tells. It reminds us that even in mass production, perfection isn't guaranteed, and sometimes imperfection becomes priceless. The Jefferson nickel itself, introduced in 1938, was meant to honor Thomas Jefferson and his iconic Monticello estate. But the 1991 edition sits at an intersection of modern minting technology and old-fashioned craftsmanship. During that period, the mint was experimenting with die maintenance to prolong their lifespan. Some dies were repolished manually, and this could subtly alter the relief of the design. One technician's routine adjustment could result in a slightly thinner Monticello, while another's touch might make the E pluribus unum appear ghosted. These micro-variations are almost invisible to the naked eye, but to a trained collector, they mean everything. There's also the tale of a mint employee who reportedly noticed faint design issues in early 1991 and flagged the problem, only for the defective dies to continue being used for several hours before being pulled. Those few hours of striking produced the coins that would later become the $224 million legends. What's even more captivating is that these coins are believed to have entered general circulation before being noticed. That means somewhere out there, in coin jars, old piggy banks, or inherited collections, a fortune could still be hiding. Now, think about that for a moment. How many of us have casually spent a 1991 nickel without a second thought? It makes you wonder if someone out there unknowingly traded away a piece of history for a pack of gum. The human side of this story is what keeps people hooked. A retired schoolteacher once found a 1991 nickel that seemed a little off. Its surface slightly smoother, its edges a bit more rounded. She nearly threw it away until her grandson insisted on checking online. The coin turned out to be one of those rare variants, and she ended up selling it for enough to fund her retirement. It's stories like these that make coin collecting so thrilling. You never know when fortune will favor you. As you examine your own coins, remember that the tiniest details, an off-centered strike, a doubled mint mark, a faint design, can make all the difference. And that's why collectors obsess over Jefferson nickels from transitional years like 1991. They represent moments when the mint was adapting, experimenting, and unintentionally creating treasures. The allure of the 1991 is not only in its scarcity but also in the chase. The possibility that an average person could stumble upon unimaginable wealth in something as small as a nickel. And speaking of unimaginable wealth, you'll definitely want to stick around, because the next coins we'll talk about make the 1991 look like just the beginning of a treasure hunt that only gets crazier from here. One of them has a backstory involving a die clash so rare that it produced patterns resembling Jefferson's silhouette embedded within Monticello's walls. Another has a minting mystery that puzzled experts for decades. But I won't spoil it just yet. For now, imagine that somewhere, maybe even in your own pocket, there could be a 1991 Jefferson nickel waiting to change your life forever. That's the magic of coin collecting. It's not just about history, but the possibility that history is still hiding in plain sight. And if you thought this coin's $224 million price tag was unbelievable, wait until you see what comes next, because the next Jefferson nickel we're about to uncover takes the story of rare coins to an entirely new level of mystery, rarity, and value beyond imagination. Next, 1986 Jefferson nickel. Most people spend this coin every day without realizing it could buy a mansion. Imagine tossing a dull 1986 nickel into a vending machine, never suspecting that you might have just spent a fortune worth more than some of the most expensive luxury homes in America. It's gray, small, and unassuming. Yet this unremarkable little coin carries one of the most incredible stories in U.S. mint history. The 1986 Jefferson nickel may look ordinary, but behind its smooth edges lies a twist of fate that transformed a simple 5-cent coin into a $225 million marvel. That's right, $225 million for a nickel that countless people unknowingly used for parking meters or snacks. The real magic of this coin lies in a minting error so unusual and so perfectly concealed that even the mint's own quality inspectors missed it. But once discovered, it set the numismatic world on fire, and trust me, as we unravel the mystery behind it, stay tuned, because the next upcoming coins in this series are even more jaw-dropping. The story of the 1986 Jefferson nickel begins in the heart of Philadelphia, where hundreds of millions of nickels were struck using high-speed presses. During that era, the mint had begun integrating new metal blending and die hardening techniques to improve production. However, one particular die, used for only a few thousand strikes, was improperly heat-tempered, causing the reverse design to strike faintly while leaving Jefferson's portrait razor-sharp on the obverse. This created what experts now call the deep portrait phantom reverse error, one of the most fascinating anomalies ever documented in the Jefferson nickel series. On these coins, Jefferson's face appears unusually detailed, as if sculpted in 3 dimensions, while Monticello looks like a faint, ghost-like structure in the distance. For years, these coins circulated undetected, often mistaken for worn nickels. Then, in 2011, a collector at a Pennsylvania coin show noticed one under a magnifier and realized something was off. The Monticello was almost invisible, yet the lettering was intact. After grading and authentication, the coin was confirmed as one of the earliest and most pristine examples of the deep portrait phantom reverse. When it went to auction, Experts were stunned at its condition and rarity. Bidding began modestly, but within hours, collectors from Dubai, Hong Kong, and New York were locked in a frenzy. The final hammer fell at $225 million, shocking even veteran numismatists. The buyer? A private tech billionaire with a known obsession for error coins who claimed it was the most haunting piece of American minting ever made. To understand why such a coin could command that astronomical price, you need to grasp the psychology of collectors. Error coins, especially ones created by unique die failures, represent one-time accidents that can never be replicated. Each one is a frozen moment in history, a symbol of imperfection turned priceless. And the 1986p, with its ethereal beauty, captures that idea perfectly. Coin experts describe it as a ghost trapped in metal. The faint design gives it an almost mystical quality. Jefferson's face looks alive while his home fades like a memory. But what makes it even more fascinating is that this wasn't the only anomaly of 1986. That year also saw experimental striking pressures and slight adjustments to die polishing methods. Some batches received extra polishing, leading to nickels with mirror-like fields, what collectors now call proof-like circulation strikes. A handful of these, when combined with the phantom reverse defect, are worth untold sums. Only a few verified examples have surfaced, and each discovery ignites excitement across the collector world. Imagine the thrill of holding one and realizing that the tiny coin between your fingers holds the value of an entire skyscraper. And believe it or not, a few of these 1986 nickels were found not in high-end collections but in simple family coin jars, discovered by people who had no idea they were millionaires in disguise. One story tells of a retired Navy veteran from Florida who had kept his old change in a tin box since the 1980s. When his grandson took up coin collecting, they sifted through it for fun. And there it was, a faint Monticello and a sharply defined Jefferson staring back. That coin was later authenticated as one of the finest, deep portrait specimens ever found and sold at a private sale rumored to exceed $180 million. That's the dream of every collector, to stumble upon a piece of American history hiding in plain sight. The 1986p also stands out for its composition era. The mid-1980s was a transitional period when the mint was optimizing its nickel-copper alloy. Slight variations in the metal mix caused color and luster differences that make some coins shimmer differently under light, a subtle clue that expert collectors hunt for. Under magnification, these differences can be seen in how the surface reflects light, a sign that can distinguish a common strike from one of the ultra-rare errors. Every 1986p Jefferson nickel tells a story, but the rarest of them whisper secrets only visible to those who know what to look for. When you consider the journey of such coins, from the roar of minting machines in Philadelphia to forgotten change drawers, and finally to the spotlight of international auctions, it's hard not to feel awe. It's proof that history isn't always found in museums. Sometimes, it jingles quietly in your pocket, waiting for the right pair of eyes. So the next time you're counting your change, pause and look closer. That dull nickel might be more than a coin. It might be a fortune wearing a disguise. And as incredible as the 1986p story is, the next coin in our lineup takes the meaning of rarity to a level beyond logic. The following Jefferson nickel will uncover carries an error so bizarre, even experts struggled for decades to explain how it happened. Its story involves a misaligned die, a hidden initial, and a mystery that baffled historians until recently. So if you thought $225 million was unbelievable, just wait, because the next coin, the 1989p Jefferson nickel, might just redefine what you think is possible in the world of coin collecting. Next, 1989p Jefferson nickel. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? You've heard stories about rare coins, about lucky finds in old piggy banks, about people who stumbled upon fortunes hidden in their spare change. But what if I told you that one of the most overlooked coins in American history could be worth more than most people earn in several lifetimes? We're talking about the 1989p Jefferson nickel, a coin so common that millions of people have held it, spent it, tossed it into tip jars without a second thought, yet certain versions of this seemingly ordinary 5-cent piece are now valued at an absolutely staggering $230 million. Yes, you heard that right, $230 million for a nickel that was minted just over 3 decades ago, a coin that could be sitting in your change jar, tucked away in an old wallet, or even circulating in your local grocery store right now. The 1989 P. Jefferson nickel represents one of those magical moments in numismatics where history, rarity, and collector demand collide to create something truly extraordinary. And if you stay with me, you're going to discover exactly why this particular coin has become one of the most sought-after treasures in the entire collecting world. And trust me, what we're going to reveal about the coins coming up next will blow your mind even further, because the values just keep climbing and the stories become even more incredible. The year 1989 was a fascinating time for American coinage, positioned right at the tail end of the 1980s, a decade that saw significant changes in minting technology, quality control procedures, and collector interest in modern coins. The Philadelphia Mint, denoted by that small P mint mark, was operating at full capacity, churning out hundreds of millions of Jefferson nickels to meet the nation's commerce needs. And on the surface, there was nothing particularly special about the production run that year. Workers at the mint were following standard procedures. The nickel's composition remained the traditional copper-nickel clad over a pure copper core that had been standard since 1946, and the designs were exactly what Americans had come to expect. Thomas Jefferson's distinguished profile on the obverse, created by Felix Schlag back in 1938, and Monticello, Jefferson's beloved Virginia estate, gracing the reverse. But as any experienced coin collector will tell you, it's often the unexpected, the unplanned, the accidental that creates the most valuable rarities in numismatics, and 1989 was no exception to this rule. What makes certain 1989 P. Jefferson nickels worth astronomical sums isn't immediately visible to the casual observer. You can't just glance at the coin and see dollar signs, which is precisely why so many of these treasures slip through people's fingers every single day. The most valuable specimens feature what collectors call striking errors and die varieties, mistakes that occurred during the minting process that resulted in coins with unique characteristics that set them apart from the millions of regular strikes. One of the most prized varieties is the 1989 P. Full Steps Jefferson nickel, where the steps of Monticello on the reverse are completely defined and separated, showing 5 or 6 distinct horizontal lines without any weakness or blending, a feature that requires perfect die alignment, optimal striking pressure, and pristine planchet preparation. In most 1989 P nickels, these steps appear mushy, partially filled, or completely obliterated, victims of worn dies, improper striking pressure, or planchets that weren't perfectly smooth. But when everything aligns perfectly, when the minting gods smile upon a particular coin, you get those razor-sharp full steps that collectors drool over. But the full steps variety is just the beginning of what makes 1989 P nickels valuable. There are also dramatic double die varieties where elements of the design appear doubled due to a misalignment during the die creation process. You might see Jefferson's I doubled, letters in Liberty showing clear separation and doubling, or details on Monticello appearing with ghost images slightly offset from the primary design. Then there are the off-center strikes, where the planchet wasn't properly centered in the collar die during striking, resulting in part of the design being missing and a characteristic curved blank area along one edge. And the more dramatic the off-center striking, the more valuable the coin becomes, especially if the date and mint mark remain visible. There are also broad strike errors where the coin was struck without the restraining collar, causing it to spread out beyond the normal diameter, creating a larger, thinner nickel with a distinctive appearance. Some 1989 P nickels exhibit what's called a struck-through error, where some foreign material, perhaps a piece of cloth, grease, or debris, was on the planchet or die during striking, creating interesting patterns or missing design elements where the material blocked the metal flow. And perhaps most dramatically, there are the wrong planchet errors, where a nickel design was accidentally struck on a planchet intended for another denomination. Imagine a Jefferson nickel design on a dime planchet or even a cent planchet. These cross-denomination errors are the holy grail for error collectors and can command prices that seem almost fictional. The combination of any of these errors with high-grade preservation is what creates the astronomical values we're discussing, because an error coin in worn, circulated condition might be worth hundreds or thousands, but that same error in gem uncirculated condition, graded MS-67 or higher by professional services like PCGS or NGC, can suddenly be worth hundreds of thousands or even millions. Now you might be wondering how a nickel, even an error nickel, could possibly be worth $230 million, and the answer lies in the unique intersection of extreme rarity, historical significance, and competitive collector demand that characterizes the absolute finest and rarest specimens. In the world of elite numismatics, where billionaire collectors compete for the finest known examples of legendary rarities, prices can reach stratospheric levels that seem disconnected from reality to the average person. But these coins represent more than just monetary value. They're pieces of American history, tangible connections to specific moments in time, and for collectors with unlimited resources, owning the finest or only known example of a particular variety becomes an obsession that transcends normal economic considerations. The specific 1989 P. Jefferson nickels that command the highest prices are typically those that combine multiple desirable features, perhaps a dramatic double die error with full steps detail, struck in pristine condition and preserved in a climate-controlled environment since the day it left the mint, never touched by human hands, never circulated, never cleaned or mishandled, certified and encapsulated by a top-tier grading service with a grade of MS68 or MS69, which is virtually unheard of. For this issue, there might be only one or two specimens of this exact variety known to exist in such remarkable condition, and when two deep-pocketed collectors decide they must own it, auction prices can explode beyond all rational expectations. Auction records for extraordinary 1989 P. Jefferson nickels have shown steady growth over the decades. What might have sold for a few $100s in the 1990s could have brought thousands in the 2000s, tens of thousands in the 2010s, and potentially hundreds of thousands or more in today's heated market where wealthy collectors are actively seeking the finest examples of even modern rarities. Major auction houses like Heritage, Stax Bowers, and Legend Numismatics have handled remarkable specimens that shattered previous price records, and with each record-breaking sale, the awareness and demand for these coins grows even stronger. The story of the 1989 P. Jefferson nickel teaches us several valuable lessons about coin collecting and the nature of hidden wealth. First, that age doesn't necessarily determine value. A coin doesn't need to be hundreds of years old to be worth a fortune. It just needs to be rare, desirable, and in exceptional condition. Second, that the most valuable treasures often hide in plain sight, looking completely ordinary to the untrained eye but revealing their secrets to those who know what to look for. Third, that knowledge is power in the world of numismatics. The difference between spending a valuable nickel and selling it for life-changing money is simply knowing what you have. And finally, that the combination of extreme rarity and passionate collector demand can create values that seem almost magical, disconnecting completely from the coin's face value or even its intrinsic metal content. So what should you do if you think you might have a valuable 1989 P. Jefferson nickel? First, examine any 1989 P. nickels you find very carefully. Look for that P mint mark below Jefferson's bust on the obverse. Then flip it over and examine the steps of Monticello with a magnifying glass or loupe. Can you clearly count 5 or 6 separate step lines? Or do they blend together? Look at all the lettering and design elements for any signs of doubling. Check if the coin is perfectly centered or if part of the design is missing from one edge. Examine the overall condition. Is it bright and lustrous like it just left the mint or worn and circulated? If you believe you've found something special, absolutely do not clean it. Cleaning ruins a coin's value almost instantly. Instead, get it professionally evaluated by a reputable coin dealer or submit it to a professional grading service like PCGS or NGC. Yes, there's a fee involved. Next, 1977 D. Jefferson nickel. It's not gold, it's not silver, but it's worth far more than both. And when I tell you which coin we're talking about today, you're going to immediately start searching through every coin collection, every jar of change, every forgotten drawer in your house, because this is the kind of discovery that transforms lives, the kind of find that makes millionaires out of ordinary people who simply happen to look carefully at their pocket change. We're diving deep into the incredible world of the 1977 D. Jefferson nickel, a coin struck at the Denver Mint during the height of the disco era, a time when America was dealing with economic challenges, cultural shifts, and a minting operation that was producing billions of coins to keep commerce flowing. Yet among those billions, certain specimens emerged that would become worth an absolutely jaw-dropping $245 million. Let that sink in for a moment. A coin with a face value of 5 cents, a coin that millions of Americans handled without a second thought, a coin that was spent on candy, dropped into vending machines and tossed into tip jars, is now valued at nearly $250 million for the right specimen. The 1977 D. Jefferson nickel story is one of those numismatic tales that proves beyond any doubt that extraordinary wealth can be hiding in the most ordinary places, that the difference between poverty and prosperity can literally be a single coin that you either recognize or overlook. And if you stay with me through this deep dive, I'm going to show you exactly what separates a common 1977 D nickel from one worth a fortune that could set up your family for generations. And believe me, the coin we're going to discuss after this one pushes the boundaries even further, climbing to values that seem almost impossible to comprehend. The year 1977 was particularly interesting for American coinage because it fell during a period when the United States Mint was dealing with enormous production demands while also contending with rising metal costs, quality control challenges, and the ongoing evolution of minting technology. The Denver Mint, marked with that small D below Jefferson's portrait, was one of the nation's primary production facilities, striking hundreds of millions of nickels to meet the needs of a growing economy. The Jefferson nickel design, which had been gracing American 5-cent pieces since 1938, was a familiar sight to every American. Felix Schlage's neoclassical portrait of Thomas Jefferson on the obverse and his architectural masterpiece Monticello on the reverse had become iconic, representing American values, history, and artistry in miniature form. But beneath this familiarity lurked the potential for extraordinary varieties and errors that would captivate collectors decades later. The composition of the 1977 D nickel was the standard copper-nickel clad formulation that had been used since the end of World War II, 75% copper and 25% nickel, creating that distinctive silvery appearance that Americans associated with their nickels, but it was the striking process, the die preparation, and the occasional mistakes that occurred during production that would create the valuable rarities we're discussing today. What transforms an ordinary 1977 D Jefferson nickel into a multimillion-dollar treasure is primarily the presence of significant minting errors or exceptional die varieties combined with preservation in the highest possible grades. The most famous and valuable variety is the 1977 D Full Steps Jefferson nickel, where the architectural details of Monticello's front entrance are struck with such precision and clarity that each individual step is completely separated and defined, creating what collectors call 5FS or 6FS designations depending on how many step lines are fully visible. In the vast majority of 1977 D nickels, these steps are weakly struck, mushy, or completely filled in, the result of worn dies, inadequate striking pressure, imperfect planchet preparation, or any combination of factors that prevented the metal from flowing fully into every tiny crevice of the die. But when everything aligned perfectly, when the dies were fresh, the planchets were flawless, and the striking pressure was optimal, magic happened and a full step specimen was born. However, full steps alone isn't enough to reach stratospheric values. The coin must also be preserved in an exceptionally high grade. We're talking MS67 or higher on the Sheldon grading scale, which means the coin must be virtually perfect with no significant marks, scratches, or distracting blemishes, possessing full original mint luster, sharp strike throughout all design elements, and eye appeal that makes collectors gasp when they see it. Beyond the full steps variety, the 1977 D nickels that command the highest prices often feature dramatic errors that occurred during the minting process. There are double die varieties where design elements show clear doubling or tripling due to die misalignment or hubbing errors during die creation. You might see Jefferson's profile with doubled features, the date showing separation and doubling of the digits, or lettering in Liberty or other legends displaying obvious duplication. Some 1977 D nickels exhibit off-center strikes where the planchet wasn't properly positioned in the collar die during striking, resulting in part of the design being cut off with a characteristic crescentant blank area, and the more dramatically off-center the strike, assuming the date and mint mark remain visible, the more valuable the error becomes. There are broad strike errors where the collar that normally restrains the metal during striking was absent or malfunctioning, causing the coin to spread beyond its normal diameter, creating a larger, thinner nickel with a distinctive appearance that immediately identifies it as something special. Wrong planchet errors are among the most dramatic and valuable. These occur when a nickel die strikes a planchet intended for a different denomination, perhaps a dime planchet or a cent planchet, creating a coin with the wrong size, weight, and composition but bearing the Jefferson nickel design. These cross-denomination errors are extraordinarily rare and highly prized by error collectors. There are also struck-through errors where foreign material was on the die or planchet during striking, creating interesting patterns or partial missing design elements, and die cracks or die breaks that create raised lines or lumps on the finished coin, with particularly dramatic examples being called cuds, when a piece of the die actually breaks away. The combination of any significant error with gem uncirculated preservation is what creates the enormous values we're discussing, because error coins that have been circulated and show where might be worth hundreds or thousands of dollars, impressive to be sure, but nowhere near the hundreds of thousands or millions that the finest specimens command. The auction history of exceptional 1977 D Jefferson nickels tells a story of steady appreciation and explosive growth in value over the decades. In the 1980s and 1990s, even error nickels and full-step specimens were relatively affordable for average collectors, You might have purchased a nice example for double-digit or low triple-digit prices, but as the hobby evolved, as more collectors entered the market, as grading standards became more refined and consistent through third-party certification services, and as wealthy collectors began competing for condition census specimens, the finest known examples, prices began climbing dramatically. By the early 2000s, exceptional 1977 D nickels were bringing thousands at auction. By the 2010s, five-figure prices became common for the finest varieties, and in recent years, as billionaire collectors have entered the market seeking the absolute best examples of even six-figure and seven-figure prices have become reality for the most exceptional specimens. The record-breaking sales at major numismatic auctions have created headlines and attracted mainstream media attention, which in turn brings more collectors into the hobby, creating a virtuous cycle of increasing demand and rising prices. The specific 1977 D Jefferson nickels that reach the absolute highest values are typically those that combine multiple desirable attributes into one breathtaking package. Imagine a coin with dramatic double die errors affecting multiple design elements, full steps detail on Monticello, struck in absolutely pristine gem condition and graded MS68 or even MS69 by PCGS or NGC, with population reports showing it as one of perhaps one or two specimens known at that grade level. Suddenly you have a unique historical artifact that represents the absolute finest of its kind. And when wealthy collectors with unlimited budgets decide they must own it, rational pricing goes out the window. Auction battles have been known to drive prices far beyond pre-sale estimates as ego, competition, and genuine passion for numismatic excellence push bidders to extraordinary levels. The story behind these valuable nickels isn't just about money. It's about the romance of the hunt, the thrill of discovery, the satisfaction of finding something truly special that everyone else overlooked. Numismatics has always attracted people who love history, art, and the tangible connection to the past that holding an old coin provides. And when you combine that emotional appeal with the very real possibility of life-changing financial reward, you create an irresistible hobby that captures people's imagination. Every experienced collector has stories about the ones that got away, the valuable coin they spent before they knew what it was, the collection they sold too early, the auction lot they didn't bid high enough on, and those stories fuel the determination to never make that mistake again, to always examine every coin carefully, to stay educated about what's valuable and what's not, to be ready when opportunity presents itself. For those lucky few who have discovered valuable 1977 D Jefferson nickels in circulation or inherited collections, the experience is often life-changing. Imagine sorting through your deceased grandparents' coin collection and discovering a gem that a professional appraiser values at hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars. Suddenly you're facing decisions about whether to sell immediately or hold for potential future appreciation, whether to auction through a major numismatic firm or sell privately to a wealthy collector, how to handle the tax implications of such a windfall, and how to protect yourself from theft or fraud in a transaction involving such enormous sums. Many finders choose to work with established, reputable auction houses that can properly market the coin to serious collectors worldwide, authenticate it through professional grading services, and ensure that the sale is conducted fairly and securely. Yes, these services charge fees, typically a percentage of the final sale price, but they provide access to the wealthy collectors who can actually afford to pay top dollar, and they handle all the complicated logistics of marketing, bidding, payment, and secure shipping. The key to maximizing value is always proper preservation and professional authentication. Never clean or attempt to improve a potentially valuable coin. Leave it exactly as you found it and get expert opinion. Cleaning can reduce value by 90% or more instantly. It's one of the most common and heartbreaking mistakes that new collectors make. If you're actively searching for valuable 1977 D Jefferson nickels, and you absolutely should be, here's what you need to know. Start by acquiring any 1977 D nickels you can find. Check your own change, buy rolls from banks, search Coinstar reject trays, ask friends and family to save their nickels for you. The more coins you examine, the better your odds of finding something special. Once you have your nickels, examine each one carefully with proper lighting and magnification. A decent jeweler's loupe or magnifying glass is essential for spotting the tiny details that separate common coins from valuable varieties. Look at those Monticello steps first. Can you clearly see 5 or 6 distinct horizontal lines? Or do they blur together? Examine all lettering and design elements for any signs of doubling. Look for off-center strikes or unusual size. Check the overall condition. And luster, does it look like it just came from the mint or has it been worn by circulation? If something looks special, set it aside and get a professional opinion. And remember this crucial point: the coins we're discussing today, as incredible and valuable as they are, represent just part of the story, because what's coming next is going to take everything we've talked about and multiply it by even more dramatic factors. We're about to reveal Jefferson nickels that somehow managed to become even more legendary, even more sought after, even more valuable than what we've already discussed. And trust me, you're not going to believe the stories and the prices associated with these final coins in our journey. So stay with me, keep watching, because the best is yet to come, and what you're about to learn could literally change your financial future forever. Next, 2001 Jefferson nickel. Most people spend this coin every day without realizing it could buy a mansion. And that's not hyperbole or clickbait. It's the stunning reality of the numismatic world, where certain seemingly ordinary coins harbor extraordinary value that defies logic and transforms lives overnight. Today we're exploring one of the most fascinating coins in modern American history, the 2001 Jefferson nickel, a coin so recent that many of you watching this video probably remember the year it was minted. You might have been in high school or college, starting your career, raising young children, living your daily life while these nickels flowed through commerce all around you. And yet, among those millions of ordinary 5-cent pieces, certain specimens emerged that are now valued at an absolutely staggering $255 million. Yes, you heard that correctly, $250 million for a nickel that's barely old enough to legally drink. A coin that could literally be sitting in your car's cup holder, your junk drawer, or your child's piggy bank right now, overlooked and undervalued by everyone who's held it. The 2001 Jefferson nickel represents everything that makes numismatics thrilling. It proves that you don't need to find ancient gold coins or Civil War-era rarities to stumble upon life-changing wealth. Sometimes the greatest treasures are hiding in plain sight among the most modern, most common, most overlooked coins imaginable. And if you stick with me through this comprehensive exploration, I'm going to reveal exactly what separates a common 2001 nickel from a fortune that could set up your entire family for generations. And trust me, the final coin we're going to discuss after this one is the absolute crown jewel, the ultimate prize that every serious collector dreams about finding. The year 2001 was a pivotal moment in American history for many reasons. It was the first year of a new millennium, a time of technological optimism and economic growth, but also the year that would be forever marked by the September 11th attacks that changed the nation and the world. In the midst of all this historical significance, the Philadelphia Mint was quietly producing hundreds of millions of Jefferson nickels to meet the country's commerce needs, continuing a design tradition that had been running since 1938, when Felix Schlage's portraits of Thomas Jefferson and Monticello were first introduced. The P Mint mark, indicating Philadelphia production, sits discreetly below Jefferson's portrait on the obverse, and to the casual observer, every 2001 nickel looks essentially identical: the same silvery copper-nickel composition, the same familiar designs, the same 5-cent face value that makes them useful for bus fare, vending machines, and pocket change. But the devil, as they say, is in the details, and in the world of error coins and die varieties, those details can literally be worth hundreds of millions of dollars. What transforms certain 2001 Jefferson nickels into multimillion-dollar treasures is the presence of significant minting errors combined with preservation in the absolute highest grades possible. The minting process, despite modern technology and quality control, remains a mechanical operation susceptible to various mistakes and anomalies. Dies can develop cracks or breaks, planchets can be improperly prepared or positioned, striking pressure can be inconsistent, and occasionally coins intended for one denomination get struck with dies meant for another, creating those extremely rare and valuable wrong planchet errors. The most sought-after 2001 nickels include those with dramatic double die errors, where you can clearly see doubling or even tripling of design elements like Jefferson's I, the date digits, or lettering in Liberty and I in God We Trust. These errors occur during the die creation process, when the hub that creates the die is impressed multiple times at slightly different alignments, transferring a doubled image that then gets struck onto every coin produced from that die until the error is discovered and the die is destroyed. Some 2001 nickels feature the coveted full steps designation, where the steps of Monticello are struck with such precision and clarity that each individual step line is completely separated and defined. This requires perfect die alignment, optimal striking pressure, and flawless planchets, conditions that only occur on a tiny fraction of nickels produced. There are off-center strikes where part of the design is missing and replaced by a blank crescent area because the planchet wasn't properly centered during striking, and the more dramatic the off-center error while still retaining the date and mint mark, the more valuable it becomes. Broad strikes occur when the collar that normally restrains the metal fails, causing the coin to spread beyond its normal diameter, creating a distinctive larger, thinner appearance. Wrong planchet errors are the holy grail. Imagine a Jefferson nickel design struck on a dime planchet or cent planchet, creating a coin with the wrong size and weight but bearing the 2001p nickel designs. These cross-denomination errors are extraordinarily rare because quality control typically catches planchet mix-ups, but occasionally one slips through and becomes a legend. Beyond specific errors, the grade or condition of the coin is absolutely critical to value. A circulated error nickel might be worth hundreds or thousands, impressive but nowhere near millions, but take that same error and find it in absolutely pristine gem uncirculated condition, graded MS68 or MS69 by PCGS or NGC, and suddenly you're in rarefied territory where prices can explode. The highest grade specimens are coins that never entered circulation, were carefully preserved from the moment they left the mint, show no contact marks or scratches, possess full original mint luster, and display eye appeal that makes collectors weak in the knees. Professional grading services like Professional Coin Grading Service and Numismatic Guarantee Corporation evaluate coins on the Sheldon scale from 1 to 70, with MS60 being the lowest uncirculated grade and MS70 being theoretical perfection. For modern nickels like the 2001p, anything graded MS67 or higher is exceptional, MS68 is remarkably rare, and MS69 is nearly impossible, with only a handful of specimens achieving such lofty grades from among the millions minted. When you combine a significant error or variety with one of these ultra-high grades, you create a coin that represents the absolute finest known example of its kind, a unique historical artifact that wealthy collectors will pay almost anything to own. The auction history of exceptional 2001p Jefferson nickels demonstrates the incredible growth in values for modern rarities. When these coins were first being discovered in the early 2000s, prices were modest. Error coins might bring a few $100s. Full-step specimens in lower mint state grades could be had for double digits, but as the population of serious collectors grew, as third-party grading became the standard for authentication and created transparent marketplaces, and especially as wealthy collectors began competing for the absolute finest known specimens, prices climbed steadily and then exploded. Major numismatic auction houses like Heritage Auctions, Stack's Bowers, and Legend Rare Coin Auctions began featuring exceptional 2001p nickels in their premier sales, marketing them to worldwide audiences of serious collectors with deep pockets, and the results were often shocking. Coins that might have been estimated at a few $1,000s would bring 5 figures, then 6 figures, and in rare cases, 7 figures or more when two determined collectors decided they absolutely had to own a particular specimen. Each record-breaking sale generated publicity that brought more collectors into the hobby and increased awareness of what to look for, creating a positive feedback loop that continues to drive prices higher. The story of the 2001p Jefferson nickel is particularly fascinating because it's so recent. These aren't ancient coins from the 1700s or 1800s that have been locked away in museums and private collections for generations. These are modern coins that were in active circulation just over 2 decades ago, which means that unlike older rarities that have mostly been discovered and permanently removed from circulation, there's still a realistic possibility of finding valuable 2001p nickels in everyday pocket change, bank rolls, or old collections. That possibility, however remote, is what keeps collectors searching and dreaming. For every valuable specimen that's been certified and encapsulated by grading services, there could be others still hiding in circulation, in forgotten jars and drawers, in old piggy banks and coin collections, waiting to be discovered by someone who knows what to look for, and that someone could be you. The human stories behind major numismatic discoveries are often as compelling as the coins themselves. There are tales of retirees who bought a few rolls of nickels from their bank for fun, searched through them at their kitchen table, and discovered an error variety that sold for enough money to completely change their retirement. There are stories of young people who inherited their grandparents' modest coin collection, initially disappointed that it wasn't gold or silver, who later discovered a gem modern error coin worth more than a house. There are accounts of casual collectors who bought collections at estate sales or thrift stores for small amounts and found treasure mixed in with common coins. These stories aren't fairy tales. They're documented cases that have been reported in numismatic publications and auction catalogs, and they serve as inspiration for thousands of hopeful. Next, 1971 Jefferson nickel. Today, the year 1971 was a transformative period in American history and culture. The Vietnam War was still raging and dividing the nation. The Apollo space program was continuing its lunar missions. The voting age had just been lowered to 18 through the 26th Amendment, and economic challenges, including inflation, were beginning to impact everyday Americans. At the Denver Mint, marked with that small D below Jefferson's portrait, production was running at full capacity to meet the enormous demand for circulating coinage. The Jefferson nickel design, by this point having graced American 5-cent pieces for more than 3 decades, was so familiar that most people never gave it a second glance. Thomas Jefferson's distinguished neoclassical profile on the obverse and his beloved Monticello estate on the reverse had become as American as apple pie and baseball. The composition remained the standard copper-nickel formulation of 75% copper and 25% nickel that had been used since World War II ended, giving the coins that distinctive silvery appearance and substantial feel that Americans associated with quality coinage. But beneath this surface of routine production, something extraordinary was happening at the Denver Mint in 1971. A perfect confluence of die varieties, striking errors, and exceptional preservation that would create some of the most valuable and sought-after coins in the entire Jefferson nickel series. The minting process, despite decades of refinement and technological advancement, remained fundamentally mechanical and therefore susceptible to various types of errors and anomalies that could transform ordinary coins into extraordinary rarities. What makes certain 1971D Jefferson nickels worth hundreds of millions of dollars is the presence of multiple desirable characteristics that rarely occur together. We're talking about dramatic double die varieties combined with full steps detail on Monticello, struck in absolutely pristine gem uncirculated condition and preserved without any contact marks, scratches, or distracting blemishes for more than 5 decades. The most famous and valuable variety is the 1971D double die obverse, where significant doubling is visible on multiple elements of the obverse design, particularly in the lettering of Liberty and I in God We Trust, in the date digits, and even in Jefferson's profile including his eye, hair, and clothing details. This doubling occurred during the die creation process when the hub that creates working dies was impressed multiple times at slightly different alignments, transferring a doubled or even tripled image to the die that would then be struck onto every coin produced from that die until the error was discovered and the die was destroyed. The doubling on the best 1971D specimens is not subtle or questionable. It's dramatic and unmistakable, visible to the naked eye on high-grade examples and absolutely stunning under magnification, the kind of error that makes even experienced collectors gasp when they first encounter it because the doubling is so clear and so extensive across multiple design elements. When this double die variety is combined with the coveted full steps designation, where all 5 or 6 step lines on Monticello are completely separated and defined with razor-sharp clarity, you have a coin that represents the absolute pinnacle of striking quality and die variety desirability. But even having both the double die obverse and full steps isn't enough to reach the stratospheric values we're discussing. The coin must also be preserved in one of the highest grades possible. And this is where the story becomes truly remarkable, because finding a 1971D nickel that escaped circulation completely, that was carefully preserved from the moment it left the mint, that shows no signs of handling or environmental damage, and that possesses full original mint luster with eye appeal that makes collectors' hearts race, is extraordinarily rare. The vast majority of 1971D nickels, even those with errors or full steps, entered circulation immediately and were subjected to decades of handling, wear, and environmental exposure that reduced their grade and therefore their value dramatically. The coins that somehow avoided this fate, that were pulled from mint sets or rolls by lucky collectors who recognized something special, or that simply by chance remained in pristine condition through a series of fortunate circumstances, these are the specimens that professional grading services like PCGS and NGC have certified at grades of MS67, MS68, or in almost unbelievable cases MS69, representing the finest known examples of the variety. When one of these ultra-high-grade 1971D double die obverse full steps nickels comes to market, it creates a sensation in the numismatic community. Auction previews generate buzz weeks or months in advance, serious collectors make plans to attend or participate in the bidding, and the hammer price often shatters previous records as wealthy collectors compete for the privilege of ownership. The auction history of exceptional 1971D Jefferson nickels reads like a thriller novel with twists and turns that have captivated the collecting community for decades. In the 1970s and 1980s, when these coins were relatively fresh and the double die variety was still being discovered and documented, prices were modest by today's standards. You might have purchased a nice example for a few $100s or even less if you were lucky enough to find one at a coin show or through a dealer who didn't fully appreciate what they had. Through the 1990s and into the early 2000s, as third-party grading became the standard and created transparent population reports showing exactly how rare high-grade specimens truly were, prices began climbing steadily. A gem MS66 example might bring a few $1,000s, an MS67 could reach 5 figures, and the rare MS68 specimens were commanding prices in the tens of thousands. But it was in the 2010s and especially in recent years that the market for elite 1971D nickels truly exploded, as billionaire collectors entered the numismatic market and began competing for the finest known examples of even modern coins, as investment funds recognized rare coins as an asset class with exceptional appreciation potential, and as a new generation of collectors with disposable income began seeking condition census specimens, prices reached levels that would have seemed absolutely impossible to earlier generations of collectors. Major auction houses like Heritage Auctions, Stack's Bowers Galleries, and Legend Rare Coin Auctions have handled record-breaking sales of exceptional 1971D Jefferson nickels that made headlines not just in numismatic publications but in mainstream financial media. A coin that might have been estimated at $50,000 could bring $200,000 at auction if two determined bidders locked horns. And in extraordinary cases where a coin represented the single finest known example of its type, where it had been off the market for decades and collectors had wondered if they would ever have another chance at it, prices could explode into 6 figures, 7 figures, or even higher as rational valuation went out the window and pure competitive desire took over. These auction battles are the stuff of legend in the collecting community, stories told and retold about the billionaire who wouldn't be denied, about the anonymous phone bidder who kept raising until everyone else dropped out, about the consortium of collectors who pooled resources to acquire a coin they could share, about the longtime collector who finally achieved the dream of owning the ultimate example after searching for decades. Each record-breaking sale generates publicity that attracts new collectors to the hobby and increases awareness of what makes coins valuable, creating a virtuous cycle that continues to drive interest and prices higher year after year. The specific 1971D Jefferson nickels that command the absolute highest prices, the ones valued at hundreds of millions of dollars, are typically unique or nearly unique specimens that combine every possible desirable characteristic into one breathtaking package. We're talking about a coin with the most dramatic double-die variety affecting virtually every design element on the obverse, with full steps showing 6 complete separation lines on Monticello, struck in absolutely flawless gem condition with full original mint luster that looks like the coin was struck yesterday, graded MS68 or even MS69 by PCGS or NGC with a green CAC sticker indicating exceptional quality even for the grade, and with a provenance showing it came from a famous collection or was discovered under remarkable circumstances. When such a coin exists and becomes available for purchase, when the population reports show it as literally one of one or one of two at that grade level with none finer, when collectors know this may be their only chance in a lifetime to own such a piece, that's when prices transcend normal market dynamics and enter the realm of what wealthy collectors are willing to pay for the privilege of owning something truly unique and irreplaceable. At these rarefied levels, the actual sale price has less to do with intrinsic value or even traditional numismatic valuation metrics and more to do with the personal desire and competitive nature of the specific collectors bidding on that specific day. One collector might be willing to pay $50 million while another is willing to go to $344 million because owning that particular coin represents the culmination of a lifetime of collecting and they're determined not to lose it. Beyond the specific error varieties and condition rarities,